So we are almost ready to leave for Panama, and I just wanted to share a little bit about what we're up to as far as provisioning and getting ready for the trip. I've got crew coming in today. Jen and Cassidy are back in San Diego. Cassidy and my brother are going to come down to Panama and meet us for the canal transit. Jen's working, so she's not going to be able to make it until maybe we get over to Mexico, unfortunately. My dad's coming in from France, and then I've got two crew coming in from Wisconsin, Nels and Rudy. My dad will be here tonight. Nels and Rudy will get here tomorrow. And then we are hopefully going to leave Wednesday morning. We were planning on leaving on April 2nd, tomorrow. Today's April 1st, except I ran into a problem with my passport. I didn't realize until the last minute that my passport expires in May, and Panama requires that you have a valid passport for 6 months after you enter the country. So I would have showed up and probably promptly been asked to leave or been deported or something. So it's a good thing that I noticed that the passport was going to expire. Unfortunate thing is now I'm going to have to pay $500 to a passport expediting agency in Washington, D.C. I'm mailing off a bunch of documents today via FedEx, and I should have the passport back in my hands Wednesday morning, April 3rd. And then we are going to hopefully leave the dock soon after that. I'll show you guys a few things that went into getting ready for this trip. I still have to put a winch back on to launch our tender. We've having a whole bunch of problems with that. It's back at the repair shop, so I'm picking that up. We are picking up the life raft tomorrow. That'll be the last thing we pick up. And then just provisioning for food and final stowing everything, lashing everything down. It's looking like the weather's going to be pretty good. We should have wind kind of on the beam the whole way. There has been a little bit of weather off of the northern coast of Colombia going into the isthmus, but we're hoping that by the time we get there everything's going to be kind of settled down. So it should be a nice trip and be kind of a good shakedown trip for this boat. The two guys that are on the trip, Nels and Rudy, are experienced sailors, so that's going to be great. I'm going to get to learn from them. We will be recording a lot of video along the way. Hopefully we'll post more updates when we get to Panama. One of the things that I wanted to do before we got underway to Panama is put a new anchor on the boat. The boat, when we got it, had a stainless steel CQR 105-pound anchor that came with the boat. It was probably on the boat when it was commissioned. Not necessarily a bad anchor, but more modern anchors, from what I've read, work a lot better for a given weight. And that anchor at only 105 pounds, the CQR shape of it, and the fact that this boat is going to be well over 100,000 pounds when it's loaded kind of made me a little wary of relying on it. So decided to spend some money and get an ultra anchor. These are great, stainless steel anchor. It's made in Turkey. Has this really cool feature that there's lead down here in the bottom of the tip, so that it'll kind of self-right when it's on a sea bottom. So we drove up to Fort Lauderdale yesterday. It's about a 3.5 hour drive from where we are in St. Petersburg. Picked one of these things up. I also picked up the swivel that they recommend. I know there's a kind of religious argument about using swivels or not using swivels on your anchor. I decided that I'm going to use one. It has a feature where it'll self-right the anchor when it comes up over the bow roller, which I think seems kind of neat. And everything I read about it looks like it's a really well-engineered piece of hardware. So I am going to trust it and just check it fairly often to make sure that nothing is getting strained. So we're going to open this thing up. It's going to be a little bit challenging to get it over onto the boat, which is over here. I got the chain kind of coming off and have to pay it out with this rope over to the bow roller. And I think I'm going to have Cassidy actually pulling rope on the windlass when we bring it up. So I got the swivel on. Now I've got to pick the chain up and put the chain onto the other side of the swivel. Our chain's in really bad shape. There's 3/8 inch galvanized chain on this boat, but it is not exactly galvanized anymore. It's a big kind of pile of rust. It's not structurally compromised, but it's definitely got a lot of surface rust. I'm going to want to replace this chain after we get back to somewhere where it's easier to deal with. Where we're parked right now, it's just almost impossible to get it off of the dock. So we've got the anchor all ready to try to pull up onto the bow of this boat. It's going to be a little bit of work. This anchor weighs 60 kilograms or about 130 pounds. Cassidy's up on deck with the winch controls. Show us the winch controls right there. So she's got controls for the windlass. I'm gonna kind of slowly lower it off the side of the dock here, and then we're gonna take up the chain up on the bow over there, and hopefully the anchor will end up where it's supposed to be, up in the bow roller. I don't want to just drop it off of the side of the dock right here because the water is really shallow, and it'll end up on the bottom, which might be concrete, and then the anchor will end up getting dragged across the bottom, or it might get stuck. So that's what we're doing. Okay, pull it up. Yep. Okay, stop.
So you're pulling with one hand, and as you go, you got to put the slack in the cleat. So do it while you're still crouched. You can feel the action, and you only need to stay on there. Then you have these two blue lines, and this one on the outside pulls the sleeve up. It's continuous, so it's the same line he's holding is going into the tube.
Yeah, I'm just
Once I go about halfway up, the sail's going to
start to
fill,
launch.
and then you're actually going to be slowing this down.
Okay.
So this is how you'll put it away.
So what are you doing?
I'm connecting the winch so that I can see if it runs, since we got it back in the shop, without having to bolt it up in here, because it's kind of a pain to get it bolted up in there. I have to peel off all the line and then put the bolts up there, and it's kind of hard to get at. So what I want to do is see if it works first. If it doesn't work, I want to see if there's a voltage drop across the terminals when it's under load. I'm using the incorrect tool to tighten these down, but
Is that safe?
sheer laziness. It's safe just for what I'm doing.
Up. Press it now.
No. Down.
Down.
Stop. Working.
It is working? Did you take longer before it blew a fuse last time? Oh really? So maybe it works?
It works.
Sweet.
One more thing we noticed before we were heading out on this trip is that the washing machine wasn't draining very well. So there's a little drain on the bottom here that we had to take out to get the thing to actually drain water. And being away from being able to receive parts for a while when we're down in Panama and Mexico, I figured it was worth replacing it rather than having to drain the water periodically from the hose. So anyway, I just got a new washing machine drain pump. This is the old one that I just took out. It looks like the motor was kind of burned out back here, kind of rusty. So I put a new washing machine drain pump in down here, and now I'm just trying to fish it back in and get it all secured. I'd actually pulled the entire washing machine out because I watched some videos on YouTube that showed how you replace the pump on one of these things, and it looked like you had to access the top panel and take the back panel off and all this work. And I should have just looked down here first, but there's just a little kick plate that comes off, and then the washing machine drain is accessible from right down here underneath the washing machine. This is one of the things that was noticed in the survey. This is the intake for the main engine air, and it's just a metal intake that has a foam thing that goes over the top of it, and it sits on this little bracket right here, and it's just metal on metal, painted white right there, and then it was painted black right here. And so just because of vibration, looks like the paint kind of got worn away, and now it's starting to rust. So I'm gonna kind of get rid of the rust, put some converter on there, and then put some rubber in between the intake and the engine mount, and hopefully that'll clean things up. It's not too bad right now, it's just surface rust, but if we let it go, it can start sucking rust into the intake, which wouldn't be good. So we got this intake all cleaned up, painted, some high temperature paint. Doesn't look super great, but it's gonna be functional, good enough to keep the rust from coming back. And over here, we've got it all cleaned up. I'm gonna put a little piece of rubber on this thing so that it doesn't vibrate and then take the paint off again. Got the engine intake all back in. Looks decent, not super clean, but good enough to keep the rust from forming. In the interest of time, we ended up using Amazon to get a whole lot of food delivered, just to save driving around town. And just kind of coming down to the wire here as far as getting ready to go. So super convenient sometimes just to order stuff on Amazon, and the prices are usually better too. I think as long as they're straight with respect to each other, right? I wouldn't worry about it.
I think there was less gap here before.
Want me to move it down?